punch, and how we develop it in our process of learning in Wing Chun. So starting from the very beginning, all the way through the ninth form, and how each form builds on our punch. Because sometimes you'll come to class and I'll say punch like this, and sometimes you'll come to class and I'll say punch like this or punch like this. And it might matter on the day and what I want you to work on or where you're at in the training or what I want you to develop. But let's go through each form, and I'm just going to pull from my head what pops into my mind about what we're adding to the punch. So it won't be all inclusive, just, real quick overview. In Silum Chow, we start working on our punch, and this is all we do in Silum Chow. We're working on our elbow. We're working on developing this training of punching with our elbow. That's it. That's all we do in Silum Chow, along with the vertical fist, right? Getting our fist lined up correctly. Then we get to Chun Q. At the Chun Q level, we add turning to that. So we turn in Chun Q, and we add that to our punch. Now, in Chun Q, you see a few different things. You see turning. You see stepping, using Vyuma. Really learning how to push off that back foot. So Vyuma is thrusting stance. So you're learning how to use your stance, thrusting in a punch, or with a palm, or whatever the case might be. And then we also have our lifting punch. And in the lifting punch, so in the turning punch, we're learning how to shift our weight from one side to the other, right? In the thrusting stance, we're learning how to step forward with it, different than we do at the Silum Chow level, okay? And then with the lifting punch, we're learning how to turn and add some sinking to that. Each one has its kind of nuances that we add to that. So starting with the turning punch, at Silum Chow, we line our body structure up with our knee, our hip, and our shoulder. Right? That's our body structure. When we start turning, and we turn the full extent of where we're going to turn, then when we bend this, we take our knee out of this body structure, we have our foot, our hip, and our shoulder. When you turn, to start off with, when we first start turning, we focus on our hip, pulling with the other hip. So when I turn this way, and I'm going to punch with my right hand, I'm pulling with this hip. That's our first focus when we turn. We don't worry about our feet. We don't say turn on your heels, turn on the balls of your feet. We just say pull your hip and punch. And the feet turn because the hip is pulling them, right? That's what we start off with in the turning punch. Then we get to our stance, our thrusting stance, and we're learning how to push from that back foot down. I'm going through this because a lot of times you see people punching like this. That is only okay for beginning students Silum Chow level. Frequently in the Wing Chun world out there, you see people going out in whatever the fighting scenario might be, and they do this. And they chase someone down, and it doesn't work. It's pathetic. It's a very, very pathetic display of Wing Chun. This is okay for a Silum Chow student. That's what they know. They know to punch with their elbow. That's all I'm doing. I'm stepping, I'm coordinating my movement to my hands, but I'm not using my legs for power. If you stay back like this, if I stay back, seated on my back leg, I'm limiting the power of my punch that my body is using, okay? So what we change at the Chun Q level is when we push up our back leg, there's that moment where our weight goes forward and then it rests back in. So when we step down, we're pushing off our back leg. You cannot push off your back leg without pushing your weight forward. I can't push and stay back. It's not possible. So when you're practicing Chun Q, you're pushing off your back leg, your weight goes forward, but it doesn't stay forward. I don't end up like this. It's a brief moment, right? If you were to capture a picture of me right in the middle, you'd see a point in time where I'm forward, and then my back leg comes under, and I sit back on my back leg again. So we learn how to use Vyuma, which is thrusting stance, for pushing off our back leg. We're also adding, a little bit of momentum because we're moving our weight forward in the course of doing that. Then with the lifting punch, we're putting more focus on our hip. We're adding our core into that, which, initially you learn to put everything in and use it all the time. And we're adding a little more twisting with our elbow, dropping our elbow, pulling up this way. But we have a little more emphasis here on dropping this back knee. So we have some sinking involved in this to make it work. You can sink with this one and pulling with this one and really pull your legs together when you do this punch to add some more power. At the beauty level, when you get to the beauty level, we add another layer onto the punch to adding power. So at the beauty level, you'll see people punching like this, right? So what's happening here is, my hand can be anywhere. Chun, and Silam Tao, basically, I'm getting a scenario where my hand is right here to punch, right? This is a little different. My hand is here and I'm coming this way. But otherwise, it's right here, right? At the beauty level, I'm taking from anywhere and I'm bringing it back to the same punch in the end. So at the beauty level, you'll see students practicing this kind of punch. We call it hammer punch. In the form, we have a locked out, and you can come underneath with it, or you can lock low and come up above it. Either way, it's fine. If you come low and punch up above it, what's happening is you're pulling with your elbow. It's kind of a whipping type, hammer type motion. You're pulling your elbow back to center, and then you're finishing with the same punch we have everywhere else. Okay? When you come across and you come in low, it's the same thing. You're pulling in and you're finishing that punch. The fist is angled a little different here because it's a lower punch and you can do that too. Alright? We add some footwork to it. We'll take a step to the side and we'll turn. And this punch is meant to this punch is meant, if he punches at me, and I lock here, and I'm getting out of the way of this punch, I'm coming right here and punching at him, right? So this punch is ideal for this type of scenario. If it's down low, it's ideal for this type of scenario, okay? What's similar about all the punches we've done so far is we're sitting on our back leg for all of them. The beauty punch, come on, you have to pick us. When we do the beauty punch, I step over here, but then when I punch, my punching arm is lined up with my back leg, right? In Chun, when I do this punch here, I'm lined up here. In Silam Tao, it's neutral. What you don't see is a punch with the front foot forward. Yeah. Okay? That's what you don't see yet. All of our punches, we have body structure that's the same so far. Silam Tao being the exception, we use our knee as the point because our knees are in from our feet. All the other punches, ideal scenario, you have your foot, your hip, and your shoulder. I know different martial arts do it differently. Some people bring their shoulder forward or whatever. Wing Chun is more geared on body structure. So when you're checking yourself, your hip, your shoulder, your foot are lined up. This punch, I'm turning my hip forward, my shoulder comes forward too, okay? So ideally, the general rule, I'm not saying there's never instances to change that, but the general rule is you have that correct body structure. Same thing with the BG punch. When I step here and I punch here, it's the same thing in the end. I'm getting there with a different path, but the end result is the same body structure. When we get to the pole form, we start adding different layers. So here to me is where it's key. You know, there's a big controversy out there in the world right now who's qualified to teach Wing Chun. From my perspective, someone who knows the whole system. That doesn't mean someone who's a BG student can't teach someone Silam Tao. But if you're looking for a teacher, find a teacher who knows the whole system, because it's going to make a difference in their knowledge. It's going to make a difference in what they know and how they teach you. When you get to the pole form, especially with the weapons, a lot of times that's the part of the system people don't learn. But it adds layers to even how you punch. After you learn it, you go back and plug these things in. So the pole adds some more layers to our punch. In the pole form, you see this, right? we come down and we transfer our energy from the back leg to the front leg. When you do this, now the thing that's different about the pull form, people will say, oh, it's not really Wing Chun because it's to the side and blah, 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 blah. No, it has the same principles. It's just that our center line is going out from directly to the side, to our shoulder, as opposed to our core line going forward, because we have a 9-foot long weapon. But all the principles are the same. So when I use a pull form and I come like this, and we do arrow punches, right? In the end, look how I'm lined up. Shoulder, hip, foot. So when you're practicing these things, you want to know, well, how far do I go? How far is too far? When have I extended to use my power? Use the same body structure we've used everywhere else. In Wing Chun, that's the wonderful thing about it. It doesn't change. As you progress, you just add more dimensions to it, but you just add another layer on top. The core is the same. So we have this power, which it has a lifting to it. It has this momentum going forward, right? Forward motion. Then the other section of the pull form, which this one is really key, you have the pull like this, and you sink on your back leg when you bring the pull up. And then you sink down on your front leg, and you straighten the back leg when you bring the pull down. So you're going this way between the 2 feet. You're letting your back leg bend, and then you're straightening your back leg. That's one way to look at it. You can look at it from both legs, okay? I can look at it from my back leg. I bend it, I straighten it. I bend it, I straighten it. You can look at it from your front leg. I look at it from both legs. I let my weight fall on the back leg. I let my weight fall on the front leg. Now, in order to let my weight fall on the front leg, I have to straighten my back leg. I have to transfer the weight from one foot to the other. So I lift up here, and I fall down here. I lift up here, and I fall down here. So I'm shifting my weight with a teetering type motion to it. Okay, if I were to take a bow and arrow, and I were to pull it back, and I were to let it go, it would fly. But at some point in time, it would drop off towards the ground, right? That's gravity. It's just the nature of science, right? So in your punches, you can incorporate that into your punches. If I take a 3-pound ball and drop it, it's not going to do much damage. But if I drop it from a high point, gravity is going to take its toll and it's going to pick up speed and it's going to go faster when it hits. Do you want me to drop a 3-pound ball on your foot from an inch, or you'll be dropping from 100 feet? It's going to feel quite different, right? So you can learn to use your body weight. The pull form teaches us that. When you're punching, we have the one punch. We have the one punch where we come forward and we're lifting like this, right? And from the pull form, we come this manner right here. So I'm transferring from the back to the front, and I'm punching as I go, right? Then we have the sinking and raising. When you do the sinking and raising, you can use both hands in it. I'm just going to use the front hand for right now because I said that with the empty hand forms, most of the time, you see it being lined up with your back leg, right? The punch being lined up with your back leg. This is an instance where you see it being lined up with the front leg. So when I come forward and punch, I can just come and punch like this, or I can drop my weight down in front. So I'm pushing off my back leg, using the view mod that we use in learning Chun, and then I'm falling on my front leg, and it adds a little bit of power to the punch. So if I just use forward momentum, I can punch like this. If I come up and then I drop, it changes the ability of how much power you can put into your punch. So there's all this hoopla over the Wing Chun punch and the 1-inch punch and this and that. It's really just basic science and math. And if you study other martial arts, for instance, if you were to go and study boxing, well, they have, I've never studied boxing. I don't know the details of boxing, but know a little enough to know they have different types of footwork that they'll use. So some people call it a tripping step or falling step or drop step. I don't know if those are all the same thing. Pretty much I gather that they are. It's the same idea. It's what you see in the full form really. So in the boxing realm, they'll teach someone that kind of footwork probably, I don't know, pretty soon. How early will you learn that in boxing? Early? Maybe within the first 6 months? Is that fair to say? Fairly quick, right? In the Wing Chun realm, you won't learn that. You might not ever learn that from your teacher. Depending on their knowledge of Wing Chun. Some people might say that that's just not Wing Chun. We don't do it. We punch like this. Well, punch something like that and see how much power you have in it. You're going to have some. It's going to be arms and it's going to be very minimal legs because you are moving forward. But you're not using body weight, you're not using momentum, you're not using the other things that you have accessible to you that are in Wing Chun that you can use. Okay, so then we get to the knife form. And then we have another little layer on top of the knife form. In the knife form, it's not that you're going to see something different so much in how you punch, except for one little bit. In the knife form, we learn to put all that together and take angles as we do it. So in the knife form, you'll see someone come with a knife and they step forward and they wave their front foot and they come like this because they have a weapon and it's heavy and you want to gain that momentum, right? But you can take that principle and apply it to a punch. If I go straight and turn this way, I'll move back over. I could be doing the same thing. If I want to punch at him, if I want to punch at him and I come this way, I can use this same punch like this and then change my footwork at the end. So it's very much like a Buji punch, except in the Buji punch, notice I'm sitting on my back leg, right? So it's this right here. If I use knife footwork, I'm going to take a Buji punch, but I'm going to weight my front leg. My front leg is folded. Okay? And I want you to notice the body structure. It's the same. Shoulder, hip, foot. It's the same in every aspect. So you're just putting different layers on top. So Wing Chun punch is not just about this. It's not just about this. There's a lot of layers to build up on it. Now, in some circles like boxing, you'll learn some of that pretty early on. Why? Because it's a sport. They're putting him out to compete. For the most part, that's what they're learning how to do. Get in a ring and hit, right? When you're learning a martial art, it's more important to take time and understand each layer that you're adding on top. If we were just to teach someone about this footwork, but we never took the time to say, use your elbow correctly, turn correctly, and we just said, step forward and punch. Wow, in 3 to 6 months, what would a punch look like? Would it be like this? Would it be like this? Would it be like this? You know, what would it look like? So, when you're learning martial art, you have to keep a couple things in mind. We want our students to get each layer before they add another layer to it. The other aspect too is, hopefully when you're learning martial art, you're learning it because you have a journey that could be a lifetime. My Sifu is well into his 60s, he still practices Wing Chun and he is getting better every time I see him. Not too many boxers are still getting in the ring in their 60s that I know of. I mean, maybe they do, but I'm going to say it's a limited amount, right? The other aspect too is, if you don't learn the layers correctly of the powers you can add on, you're going to inflict injuries on yourself along the way. You know, if you just start throwing out a punch like this and you don't have the right structure, how many people hurt their shoulders? How many people hurt their elbows? Because they don't have the basics down. So we take a little more time building up the layers because for various reasons. One, we want people to get it down right. One, we want it to become intrinsic, where it's just second nature. You don't have to think about it. Eventually, when you punch, You don't have to think about, oh, keep my elbow in, oh, keep my fist vertical. Oh, you know, you don't have to think about those things because you've gone through the training that builds all those things on top of each other. And hopefully, it's something you can do for years and years, decades, a lifetime, and it actually will promote health as opposed to injuries to yourself. So, just want to take a few minutes, kind of go over some of the details of, you know, sometimes you might come to class and I might say, oh, pull with your hip. Sometimes, depending on the student or the level, you might hear me telling someone else, oh, sink down on this one. I'll sink down on this one. I mean, you might hear me saying different things according to someone's level. Or you might just, I just might want an individual to work on a different aspect of their punch. Mostly, I want you to realize when you see someone doing this sort of thing, it's not what Wing Chun is about. That is Silat. That is a beginning level student. There's teachers out there that are teaching people to punch like this. Then, as far as my understanding of Wing Chun goes, they're at a Silat level. And it's okay to teach your Silat students to do that. That's appropriate. That's what they're working on. But if someone's a BUG student and they still punch like this, there's a problem with that. Because the further you progress, the more power you should build, the more skill you should have, the more you should be able to. In Wing Chun, we say that we have an explosive punch. We use our whole body, the whole entire thing. But the Silat student goes like this, right? Now, once someone has gone to the pole, once someone's gone to the knives, guess what? When they're a Chun Q student, they're probably going to be thinking about, oh, sink on this leg, sink on this leg, sink on this leg. They're going to approach it, but you can't help it. Once you know something, you go back and you incorporate it. It's there before that. It's just that people don't always practice it. You see this in the dummy form. We have this sinking and this raising in section 3, but it's in section 2 too, right? We do the fox house, we do a jut, and then we come right here. And guess what you're doing? You're pushing off this leg, you're sinking down on this one, and you're getting that strike in there. It's there. It's just that maybe you don't see it until you've learned other things and you go back and put the layer on top. So a beginning dummy student will probably just turn right here. They'll turn, they'll fox out, and they'll use their hip, and they'll turn straight back. Whereas someone who knows a little more, maybe someone who knows the pole forms and learns some other things, they'll fox out and they'll probably sink on this foot right here to get that added power in. So, you know, I don't say all that so you go home. I don't know, if I was a Silat Chun student, I'd probably go home and practice it. But I don't say that always so you do go home and practice it. I say always so you have an understanding of the whole picture of how to do a Wing Chun punch. Bruce was a good example. He had a limited knowledge of Wing Chun. He didn't go through the whole system, but that's not an insult to him. Nobody argues about that, right? He learned Silat. I think he learned Chun Q. I know there's pictures of him out there on the dummy, so I know he did some stuff on the dummy. I don't believe he did the dummy form like we do it today, but I know he did some stuff on the dummy. So he took his knowledge of what he had and the principles that he had, and then he went and he studied other arts, right? He studied fencing, he studied boxing, he studied other things to learn how to put those other layers on top so he could get that powerful punch in the end. It's in other martial arts. It has to be because scientifically there's only so many ways you can use your body to punch, right? There's only so many ways you can do things according to science. The further along you get in martial arts, the more you're going to see similarities amongst different arts. The biggest differences are the strategies and how it's approached. Am I going to keep a long range? Am I going to keep a kicking range? Am I going to, my emphasis is going to be on kicking someone? Is my emphasis going to be on close in, trapping? What is your approach to how you're going to fight? That is some of the biggest differences. Some of the other things actually have a lot of similarities. If you stick around long enough in something, study some different things, you begin to see them, which I haven't. I've only studied Wing Chun, so but I've just seen some other things, read a little bit here and there. I imagine the people that study more would have a better perspective on that. So it's just to give you an idea of kind of overview of how we punch in Wing Chun and how with each level, with each form or each level that you're at, you can add different powers to put